Hello everyone, welcome to 담제's 책방. Today I'm reading How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie, published by Libero. Chapter 3, What Worry May Do to You. Businessmen who do not know how to fight worry die young. Dr. Alexis Carrel. Some time ago, a neighbor rang my doorbell one evening and urged me and my family to be vaccinated against smallpox. He was only one of thousands of volunteers who were ringing doorbells all over New York City. Frightened people stood in lines for hours at a time to be vaccinated. Vaccination stations were open not only in all hospitals, but also in firehouses, police precincts, and in large industrial plants. More than 2,000 doctors and nurses worked feverishly day and night, vaccinating crowds. The cause of all this excitement? 8 people in New York City had smallpox, and 2 had died. 2 deaths out of a population of almost 8 million. Now I have lived in New York for over 37 years, and no one has ever yet rung my doorbell to warn me against the emotional sickness of worry. An illness that, during the last 37 years, has caused 10,000 times more damage than smallpox. No doorbell ringer has ever warned me that 1 person out of 10 now living in these United States will have a nervous breakdown, induced in the vast majority of cases by worry and emotional conflicts. So I am writing this chapter to ring your doorbell and warn you. The great Nobel Prize winner in medicine, Dr. Alexis Carrel, said, "Businessmen who do not know how to fight worry die young, and so do housewives and horse doctors and bricklayers." A few years ago, I spent my vacation motoring through Texas and New Mexico with Dr. O.F. Garber, one of the medical executives of the Santa Fe Railway. His exact title was Chief Physician of the Gulf, Colorado, and Santa Fe Hospital Association. We got to talking about the effects of worry, and he said, 70% of all patients who come to physicians could cure themselves if they only got rid of their fears and worries. Don't think for a moment that I mean that their ills are imaginary, he said. Their ills are as real as a throbbing toothache and sometimes 100 times more serious. I refer to such illnesses as nervous indigestion, some stomach ulcers, heart disturbances, insomnia, some headaches, and some types of paralysis. These illnesses are real. I know what I'm talking about, said Dr. Garber, for I myself suffered from a stomach ulcer for 12 years. Fear causes worry. Worry makes you tense and nervous and affects the nerves of your stomach and actually changes the gastric juices of your stomach from normal to abnormal and often leads to stomach ulcers. Dr. Joseph F. Montaigne, author of the book Nervous Stomach Trouble, says much the same thing. He says, "You do not get stomach ulcers from what you eat. You get ulcers from what is eating you." Dr. W.C. Alvarez of the Mayo Clinic said ulcers frequently flare up and subside according to the hills and valleys of emotional stress. That statement was backed up by a study of 15,000 patients treated for stomach disorders at the Mayo Clinic. 4 out of 5 had no physical basis whatever for their stomach illnesses. Fear, worry, hate, supreme selfishness, and the inability to adjust themselves to the world of reality. These were largely the causes of their stomach illnesses and stomach ulcers. Stomach ulcers can kill you. According to Life magazine, They now stand 10th in our list of fatal diseases. I recently had some correspondence with Dr. Harold C. Harbine of the Mayo Clinic. He read a paper at the annual meeting of the American Association of Industrial Physicians and Surgeons, saying that he had made a study of 176 business executives whose average age was 44.3 years. He reported that slightly more than a third of these executives suffered from one of three ailments peculiar to high-tension living: heart disease, digestive tract ulcers, and high blood pressure. Think of it. A third of our business executives are wrecking their bodies with heart disease, ulcers, and high blood pressure before they even reach 45. What price success? And they aren't even buying success. Can any man possibly be a success who is paying for business advancement with stomach ulcers and heart trouble? What shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his health? Even if he owned the whole world, he could sleep in only one bed at a time and eat only 3 meals a day. Even a ditch digger can do that, and probably sleep more soundly and enjoy his food more than a high-powered executive. Frankly, I would rather be a sharecropper down in Alabama with a banjo on my knee than wreck my health at 45 by trying to run a railroad or a cigarette company. And speaking of cigarettes, the best-known cigarette manufacturer in the world recently dropped dead from heart failure while trying to take a little recreation in the Canadian woods. He amassed millions and fell dead at 61. He probably traded years of his life for what is called business success. In my estimation, this cigarette executive, with all his millions, was not half as successful as my father, a misery farmer who died at 89 without a dollar. The famous Mayo brothers declare that more than half of our hospital beds are occupied by people with nervous troubles. Yet when the nerves of these people are studied under a high-powered microscope in a post-mortem examination, their nerves in most cases are apparently as healthy as the nerves of Jack Dempsey. Their nervous troubles are caused not by a physical deterioration of the nerves, but by emotions of pituitary frustration, anxiety, worry, fear, defeat, despair. Plato said that the greatest mistake physicians make is that they attempt to cure the body without attempting to cure the mind. Yet the mind and body are one and should not be treated separately. It took medical science 2,300 years to recognize this great truth. We are just now beginning to develop a new kind of medicine called psychosomatic medicine, a medicine that treats both the mind and the body. It is high time we were doing that, for medical science has largely wiped out the terrible diseases caused by physical germs, diseases such as smallpox, cholera, yellow fever, and scores of other scourges that swept untold millions into untimely graves. But medical science has been unable to cope with the mental and physical wrecks caused not by germs, but by emotions of worry, fear, hate, frustration, and despair. Casualties caused by these emotional diseases are mounting and spreading with catastrophic rapidity. Doctors figure that 1 American in every 20 now alive will spend a part of his life in an institution for the mentally ill. 1 out of every 6 of our young men called up by the draft in the Second World War was rejected as mentally diseased or defective. What causes insanity? No one knows all the answers, but it is highly probable that in many cases, fear and worry are contributing factors. The anxious and harassed individual who is unable to cope with the harsh world of reality breaks off all contact with his environment and retreats into a private dream world of his own making, and this solves his worry problems. As I write, I have on my desk a book by Dr. Edward Podolsky entitled Stop Worrying and Get Well. Here are some of the chapter titles in that book. What worry does to the heart? High blood pressure is fed by worry. Rheumatism can be caused by worry. Worry less for your stomach's sake. How worry can cause a cold. Worry and thyroid. The worrying diabetic. Another illuminating book about worry is Man Against Himself by Dr. Carl Menninger, one of the Mayo brothers of psychiatry. Dr. Menninger's book will not give you any rules about how to avoid worry, but it will give you a startling revelation of how we destroy our bodies and minds by anxiety, frustration, hatred, resentment, rebellion, and fear. You will probably find a copy in your public library. Worry can make even the most stolid person ill. General Grant discovered that during the closing days of the Civil War, the story goes like this. Grant had been besieging Richmond for 9 months. General Lee's troops, ragged and hungry, were beaten. Entire regiments were deserting at a time. Others were holding prayer meetings in their tents, shouting, weeping, seeing visions. The end was close. Lee's men set fire to the cotton and tobacco warehouses in Richmond, burned the arsenal, and fled from the city at night, while towering flames roared up into darkness. Grant was in hot pursuit, banging away at the Confederates from both sides and the rear, while Sheridan's cavalry was heading them off in front, tearing up railway lines and capturing supply trains. Grant, half blind with a violent sick headache, fell behind his army and stopped at a farmhouse. I spent the night, he records in his memoir, in bathing my feet in hot water and mustard, and putting mustard pasters on my wrist and the back part of my neck, hoping to be cured by morning. The next morning he was cured instantaneously, and the thing that cured him was not a mustard plaster, but a horseman galloping down the road with a letter from Lee saying he wanted to surrender. When the officer bearing the message reached me, Grant wrote, I was still suffering with the sick headache, but the instant I saw the contents of the note, I was cured. Obviously, it was Grant's worries, tensions, and emotions that made him ill. He was cured instantly the moment his emotions took on the hue of confidence, achievement, and victory. 70 years later, Henry Morgenthau, Jr., Secretary of the Treasury in Franklin D. Roosevelt's cabinet, discovered that worry could make him so ill that he was dizzy. He records in his diary that he was terribly worried when the president, in order to raise the price of wheat, bought 4,400,000 bushels in one day. He says in his diary, I felt literally dizzy while the thing was going on. I went home and went to bed for 2 hours after lunch. If I want to see what worry does to people, I don't have to go to a library or a physician. I can look out of the window of my house where I am writing this book, and I can see within one block one house where worry caused a nervous breakdown, and another house where a man worried himself into diabetes. When the stock market went down, the sugar in his blood and urine went up. When Montaigne, the illustrious French philosopher, was elected mayor of his hometown, Bordeaux, he said to his fellow citizens, "I am willing to take your affairs into my hands, but not into my liver and lungs." This neighbor of mine took the affairs of the stock market into the bloodstream and almost killed himself. If I want to be reminded of what worry does to people, I don't need to look at my neighbors' houses. I can look at this very room where I am writing now and be reminded that a former owner of this house worried himself into an untimely grave. Worry can put you into a wheelchair with rheumatism and arthritis. Dr. Russell L. Cecil of the Cornell University Medical School is a world-recognized authority on arthritis, and he has listed 4 of the commonest conditions that bring on arthritis. 1. Marital shipwreck. 2. Financial disaster and grief. 3. Loneliness and worry. 4. Long-cherished resentment. Naturally, these 4 emotional situations are far from being the only causes of arthritis. There are many different kinds of arthritis due to various causes. But to repeat, the commonest conditions that bring on arthritis are the 4 listed by Dr. Russell L. Cecil. For example, a friend of mine was so hard beat during the Depression that the gas company shut off the gas and the bank foreclosed the mortgage on the house. His wife suddenly had a painful attack of arthritis, and in spite of medicine and diet, the arthritis continued until their financial situation improved. Worry can even cause tooth decay. Dr. William I. L. McGonigal said in an address before the American Dental Association that unpleasant emotions such as those caused by worry, fear, nagging may upset the body's calcium balance and cause tooth decay. Dr. McGonigal told of a patient of his who had always had a perfect set of teeth until he began to worry over his wife's sudden illness. During the 3 weeks she was in the hospital, he developed 9 cavities. Cavities brought on by worry. Have you ever seen a person with an acutely overactive thyroid? I have, and I can tell you they tremble, they shake, they look like someone half scared to death. And that's about what it amounts to. The thyroid gland, the gland that regulates the body, has been thrown out of kilter. It speeds up the heart, and the whole body is roaring away at full blast like a furnace with all its traps wide open. And if this isn't checked by operation or treatment, the victim may die, may burn himself out. A short time ago, I went to Philadelphia with a friend of mine who has this disease. We consulted Dr. Israel Bram, 1633 Spruce Street, a famous specialist who has been treating this type of ailment for 38 years. Here is the advice he had hanging on the wall of his waiting room, painted on a large wooden sign. I copied it down on the back of an envelope while I was waiting. Relaxation and recreation. The most relaxing, recreating forces are healthy religion, sleep, music, and laughter. Have faith in God, learn to sleep well, love good music, see the funny side of life, and health and happiness will be yours. The first question he asked this friend of mine was, what emotional disturbance brought on this condition? He warned my friend that if he didn't stop worrying, he could get other complications, heart trouble, stomach ulcers, or diabetes. All of these diseases, said that eminent doctor, are cousins, first cousins. Sure, they are first cousins. They are all worries diseases. When I interviewed Merle Oberon, she told me that she refused to worry because she knew that worry would destroy her cheap asset on the motion picture screen, her good looks. When I first tried to break into the movies, she told me, I was worried and scared. I had just come from India and I didn't know anyone in London, where I was trying to get a job. I saw a few producers, but none of them hired me, and the little money I had began to give out. For 2 weeks, I lived on nothing but crackers and water. I was not only worried now, I was hungry. I said to myself, maybe you're a fool. Maybe you will never break into the movies. After all, you have no experience. You've never acted at all. What have you to offer but a rather pretty face? I went to the mirror, and when I looked in that mirror, I saw what worry was doing to my looks. I saw the lines it was forming. I saw the anxious expression, so I said to myself, you've got to stop this at once. You can't afford to worry. The only thing you have to offer at all is your looks, and worry will ruin them. Few things can age and sour a woman and destroy her looks as quickly as worry. Worry colors the expression. It makes us clench our jaws and lines our faces with wrinkles. It forms a permanent scowl. It may turn the hair gray and in some cases even make it fall out. It can ruin the complexion. It can bring on all kinds of skin rashes, eruptions, and pimples. Heart disease is the #1 killer in America today. During the Second World War, almost a third of 1,000,000 men were killed in combat. But during that same period, heart disease killed 2 million civilians, and 1 million of those casualties were caused by the kind of heart disease that is brought on by worry and high-tension living. Yes, heart disease is one of the chief reasons why Dr. Alexis Carrel said, businessmen who do not know how to fight worry die young. The Negroes down south and the Chinese rarely have the kind of heart disease brought on by worry, because they take things calmly. 20 times as many doctors as farm workers die from heart failure. The doctors lead tense lives and pay the penalty. The Lord may forgive us our sins, said William James, but the nervous system never does. Here is a startling and almost incredible fact. More Americans commit suicide each year than die from the 5 most common communicable diseases. Why? The answer is largely worry. When the cruel Chinese warlord wanted to torture their prisoners, they would tie their prisoners' hand and foot and put them under a bag of water that constantly dripped, day and night. These drops of water constantly falling on the head finally became like the sound of hammer blows and drove men insane. This same method of torture was used during the Spanish Inquisition and in German concentration camps under Hitler. Worry is like the constant drip, drip, drip of water, and the constant drip, drip, drip of worry often drives men to insanity and suicide. When I was a country lad in misery, I was half scared to death by listening to Billy Sunday describe the hellfires of the next world. But he never ever mentioned the hellfires of physical agony that warriors may have to face here and now. For example, if you are a chronic warrior, you may be stricken someday with one of the most excruciating pains ever endured by man, angina pectoris. Boy, if that ever hits you, you will scream with agony. Your screams will make the sounds in Dante's Inferno sound like babies in toilet. You will say to yourself then, oh God, if I can ever get over this, I will never worry about anything, ever. If you think I'm exaggerating, ask your family physician. Do you love life? Do you want to live long and enjoy good health? Here is how you can do it. I am quoting Dr. Alexis Carrel again. He said, those who keep the peace of their inner selves in the midst of the tumult of the modern city are immune from nervous diseases. Can you keep the peace of inner self in the midst of the tumult of a modern city? If you are a normal person, the answer is yes. Emphatically, yes. Most of us are stronger than we realize. We have inner resources that we have probably never tapped. As Thoreau said in his immoral book Walden, I know of no more encouraging fact that the unquestionable ability of man to elevate his life by a conscious endeavor. If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. Surely, many of the readers of this book have as much willpower and as many inner resources as Olga K. Jarvey has. She discovered that under the most tragic circumstances, she could banish worry. I firmly believe that you and I can also, if we apply the old truths discussed in this volume. Here is Olga K. Jarvey's story as she wrote it for me. 8.5 years ago, I was condemned to die, a slow, agonizing death of cancer. The best medical brains of the country, the Mayo brothers, confirmed the sentence. I was at a dead-end street. The ultimate gaped at me. I was young. I did not want to die. In my desperation, I phoned to my doctor at Kellogg and cried out to him the despair in my heart. Rather impatiently, he upbraided me. What's the matter, Olga? Haven't you any fight in you? Sure, you will die if you keep on crying. Yes, the worst has overtaken you, okay? Face the facts, quit worrying, and then do something about it. Right then and there, I took an oath so solemn that the nails sank deep into my flesh and cold chills ran down my spine. I am not going to worry. I am not going to cry. And if there is anything to mind over matter, I am going to win. I am going to live. The usual amount of X-ray in such advanced cases, where they cannot apply radium, is 10.5 minutes a day for 30 days. They gave me X-ray for 14.5 minutes a day for 49 days. And although my bones stuck out of my emaciated body like rocks on a barren hillside, and although my feet were like lead, I did not worry. Not once did I cry. I smiled. Yes, I actually forced myself to smile. I am not so idiotic as to imagine that merely smiling can cure cancer, but I do believe that a cheerful mental attitude helps the body fight disease. At any rate, I experienced one of the miracle cures of cancer. I have never been healthier than in the last few years. Thanks to those challenging, fighting words. Face the facts, quit worrying, then do something about it. I am going to close this chapter by repeating its title, the words of Dr. Alexis Carrel. Businessmen who do not know how to fight, worry, die young. The fanatical followers of the Prophet Muhammad often had verses from the Quran tattooed on their breasts. I would like to have the title of this chapter tattooed on the breast of every reader of this book. Businessmen who do not know how to fight worry die young. Was Dr. Carroll speaking of you? Could be. In a nutshell, fundamental facts you should know about worry. Rule number 1. If you want to avoid worry, do what Sir William Osler did. Live in daytime compartments. Don't stew about the future. Just live each day until bedtime. Rule number 2. The next time trouble, with a capital T, comes gunning for you and backs you up in a corner, try the magic formula of Willis H. Carrier. A. Ask yourself, what is the worst that can possibly happen if I can't solve my problem? B. Prepare yourself mentally to accept the worst if necessary. C. Then calmly try to improve upon the worst, which you have already mentally agreed to accept. Rule number 3. Remind yourself of the exorbitant price you can pay for worry in terms of your health. Businessmen who do not know how to fight worry die young. Well, until now, I just read you guys part 1 of this book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Next time, I will be with you with part 2, Basic Techniques in Analyzing Worry. Thank you for listening, and God bless you. See you soon.